All right, all right. I know everyone's very accustomed to networking, and that's what we wanted, actually, is a big networking component to this. Hello, my name is Steve Vito, and I'm the president of Government CIO Magazine. And on behalf of my many colleagues who worked very hard on this event tonight, we want to thank you all for being here. We're also live streaming this on our webpage. So those of you who are watching it online, thank you for taking the time to watch it. We certainly appreciate that. Also, we have a social media component to this. Down here, I understand, does not do well with regular service, but there is a Wi-Fi, and I think it's called Guest, and it's really a very intricate password. I think it's ABC1234 or something like that. So I'm sure you cybersecurity people out there are cringing at that. Yeah, right. You know, if you saw any of our promotional material, we define ourselves, Government CIO Magazine, as a place where tech-minded government leaders come to learn. And we really strive to do that every day. What we don't say in that tagline, however, is how we also strive to do things differently. And I think if you look at this venue, you would certainly confirm that we are doing things differently. How many have never been to this venue before? The suite? Yeah, a good portion. That's what we thought, and we're glad we do it here. So thanks for taking the time to come here. Also, I think we'll reaffirm what I just said about doing things differently is our new website. That should be up and running within the next few weeks. It's been built, but it's going under some testing right now. So be on the lookout for that, and I think your reaction will be, wow, this truly is different. So be on the lookout. Our next event is towards the end of February, and the title for that is Silicon Valley Meets Uncle Sam. It's going to be about how basically Uncle Sam does have the welcome mat open for innovation. Companies are very anxious to tell them about what they're doing, but there are some hindrances unique to this market. So we're going to be getting at that a little bit. As you also know, our parent company, Government CIO, is making a donation to Vet Sports for everyone that attended tonight. So check out their website. They have a gala coming up in May, vetsports.org. So I do want to take a second. If you've ever been involved in an event, you know that you can't do it without sponsors. We have three terrific sponsors tonight: Cylance, Pure Storage, and NCI. So please give them a round of applause. With that in mind, I want to invite up a name that you probably already know, Nick Sinai. He's going to come up, and we're going to chat a little bit. And Nick is sort of the representative, if you will, for Cylance tonight. He does not work there. He is actually with the investment firm. Is that microphone not working? We can work with this one mic. The reason you may know Nick's name, Nick was, here, you can get a little closer. I'm okay. The reason you may know Nick is he was Deputy Chief Technology Officer for the Lighthouse. His name is attached to a lot of major initiatives relative to data. The Open Data Initiative, the Open Government Initiative, was a co-author of Big Data report in 2014. So he has a very unique perspective. And now he is an investor. He's an investor with Cylance and one of our sponsors. So he has a truly unique perspective, both from an employee of government, a tech employee, and also he's an investor. And he's at the Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, where he's on the adjunct faculty there. So Nick, we're going to take a few minutes and chat a little bit about your perspective on AI in government. And of course, also we'll touch on Cylance too. So what is your general impression of AI? Should I be worried that it's going to put me out of a job?
No, and thank you for having me, Stephen, and thank you all for coming out tonight. I think we sometimes get confused, maybe not this room, but a lot of folks get confused about AI, and we have this kind of Hollywood conception of killer robots and the singularity and what people call generalized AI, right? And today where we are is specialized artificial intelligence and machine learning. And that's the kind of thing that helps you pick out images better, faster on Facebook, for example, or helps tag your friends and family. And so that's where we are, and there's a bunch of really interesting applications that are going on today. I mean, I'll just give a couple. So at Walter Reed, with, I think it's the VA, they've basically figured out, looking at a bunch of electronic health records and other biomarkers and those types of things to see when we should close the wounds of combat veterans. And so they've created a decision support tool. So that's one small example where we're using AI today. And look, we're investors in a number of companies, and AI is used in cybersecurity, in online fraud, in a number of different applications.
You have, as I said, a perspective as a government technologist and also as someone that is associated with a company that sells to government. There seems, as an observer of the government technology market, there seems to be some sort of a paradox. Government wants to instill innovation. Companies are eager to show them how they can be innovative, and yet there seems to be some challenges to make that connection. Did you find that when you were with government that you wanted to do something, but sometimes it was just a little bit more difficult than what you wanted?
Yeah, I think that you have a newfound appreciation for the constraints in government, right? And so the longer you spend in government, the more you kind of see these constraints, and these are obstacles that you have to be a policy or program or product entrepreneur inside of government. And so I was very fortunate to work for Anish Chopra, Todd Park, and Megan Smith, all great entrepreneurs in their own right, and three very different folks. We spent a lot of time collaborating with startups and scale-ups and trying to find ways for them to use data. So I led the open data initiatives, and the idea was this is a public good, and the more that we can make this available to the world. And so we did data jams and data paloozas and had that whole cadence, and sometimes momentum is really important to get going.
Let's talk a little bit about Cylance. You're involved as an investor in the company. What did you see in this company that piqued your interest so much?
Yeah, so Cylance is I have a bunch of fantastic companies and a few in AI. Sif Science would be in online fraud, Darktrace on network anomalies, but the one that I'm closest to and I work really closely with is Cylance. And that really is AI for cybersecurity, focused initially on the endpoint. And they really have a disruptive approach. And the idea is signatures just don't work anymore. So this kind of legacy antivirus systems, a lot of stuff still gets through. And so we saw at OPM, for example, and Cylance was involved in helping find the advanced persistent threat and in the recovery. So it's a great example of a different approach using AI and machine learning to actually understand the file and prevent malware from executing in the first place.
You know, one of the things I've discovered that companies that are most successful selling to government are those companies that are dedicated to the government client, because it truly is a different kind of client, right? They have different needs, different acquisition. Tell us a little bit about Cylance's team going into the government market.
Yeah, it's a really great team, and it's the CEO is Stu McClure, Malcolm Harkins, the CTO or the chief trust officer, is fantastic. Here in DC, they're led by Chris Zimmerman, and what's really fantastic is they understand the needs, the complexity of the federal government, and they are cloud-based. And have FedRAMP certification. I think they're the only portfolio company that's all the way through the FedRAMP process, but also can be on-prem as well, too. Yeah. And so they understand the complexities of federal government.
Great, great. Well, we certainly, again, appreciate the support Cylance has given us tonight. It's because of their generosity and the other companies that were able to host this. So, Nick, thank you very much.
Yeah, this is great. I'm really looking forward to the next panel here.
Great. Thank you. And talking about the next panel, allow me to bring up the editor-in-chief of Government CIO magazine, a name you're probably very familiar with. She's been with the media market here, government, and other publications. She's an absolute delight to work with, a true, hard-working, smart journalist. Right. Camille Tudy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much, Nick. So I guess I will be delivering my remarks standing up. Thank you so much for coming to this event. We're super excited that so many people showed up and think that this is an important topic. So we want to encourage you to share on social media. So using the hashtag AIGov, tweet pictures, comments, shoefies, if you want to do that, or shoefies of my shoes. So we're going to have a great conversation with true experts in the field. The AI revolution is here, and we're going to learn tonight about the different applications, solutions, and vision that will shape how AI transforms government. So some people have expressed concern about aspects of these emerging technologies. Yet in a world where citizens demand more of government, AI could help make the government more efficient and more effective. So with further ado, please welcome our first panel. We got Justin Herman, who's the lead of GSA's Emerging Citizen Technology Office, known as CXO. We got Alyssa Johnson, who's the CISO at Xerox, and she's also a former deputy CIO in the Executive Office of the President in the White House. And a last-minute addition, Michael Garris, who's a senior scientist and founder and chair of the Artificial Intelligence Community of Interest at NIST. So Michael has been with NIST for 32 years?
31.
31.
But who's counting?
Who's counting, yes. So I want to give you guys about a minute or so to talk a little bit about the role of AI in your agency or your organization. So Alyssa, Xerox, talk a little bit about what you do and how you're applying AI or even thinking about AI.
So I am the Chief Information Security Officer for Xerox. You may think Xerox Document Technology. We also have the Palo Alto Research Center that does a lot of innovative thinking, think tank type of work. I'm looking at AI from a perspective of information security and allowing artificial intelligence to kind of do better things, more things, bigger things for us so that we can allow our resources to work on higher level, higher risk tasks and allow artificial intelligence to kind of fill in that cybersecurity talent gap that we've all heard about. I think that's a great way to replace or kind of realign our workforce. And so that's kind of what we're looking at it from in our perspective. That's what we're looking at it from our perspective in Xerox. We also look at it from a perspective of modeling, data modeling in terms of cybersecurity as well. How can you use AI engines to help model behavior so that we can anticipate threats, respond to threats, and then figure out if the mitigation efforts or compensating controls will help in any way?
Michael?
Yeah, so am I on?
You're on.
All right, so I'm wearing two hats this evening. The first is Justin and I are co-members on an interagency subcommittee on machine learning and AI out of the Office of Science Technology Policy, National Science Technology Council. And I'm privileged to co-lead that. And then the second hat I have tonight is I am a senior scientist at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And so there I am working to help coordinate AI programmatically across the Institute. And so perhaps we'll talk a little bit about interagency along the way, but talking about NIST, we are a measurement metrology laboratory. We're multi-domain, so we have everything from robotics and material science and information technology, just a vast array of different disciplines. And it's no surprise that every single project lead that I encounter is either exploring the use of machine learning or they're like, I wonder what this can do for me in my domain. So we are looking to support that and use AI to enhance all these disciplines in the area of measurement science. But also, there's an aspect of and a need for verification validation of these new technologies. And so one of the things that NIST has an opportunity, and I would say a responsibility to help work with the community in, is to be able to provide standards, if you will, metrics and methods on how to measure and assess areas of trustworthiness. So, is this new emerging AI technology, is it reliable? Is it performing as expected? Is there uncertainty? Is this AI technology secure? Very important. Is this AI technology private or privacy enhanced? We also have heard a lot of concern raised about algorithmic bias. So we want technology that doesn't have embedded harmful bias in it. How do you measure, how do you even define that and then quantify it? And once you quantify it, what do you do to mitigate it? And then we also know that a lot of today's machine learning is not interpretable, very difficult to interpret, very difficult to derive an explanation. So these are all areas very ripe for standardization, and as a community, how we can come together to measure and evaluate, and yes, eventually, as these things mature, we can standardize on it.
And Justin, you've spoken
So
at
I'm just going to
every
take the mic from the beginning.
yeah. AI event, and
That's what we're trying. We have a speakers bureau now
Yeah, right?
to help distribute amongst agencies.
You've become the spokesman for AI and other emerging technologies in government. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, so I work for a General Services Administration in a new program called the Emerging Citizen Technology Program. Specifically, it's when federal agencies come together and say, listen, there's a new technology, generally citizen-facing, hence the name of it, that we know that there's use cases for. We know we want to start investing in this, but no roadmaps exist forward. We don't understand what the policies are, what the guidance are. We don't understand maybe how to approach the acquisitions of it. So then what we do is we put together government-wide programs and interagency efforts in order to start building those roadmaps for the first time. That's where I first met Michael, of course, working on the subcommittee. Because one of the things that always gets us is we watch, and the public perception of where the U.S. federal government is on AI, and then where things actually are, there's a large chasm. And in that chasm is some of the questions that Mike brought up. Some of the issues are resources and services we have to start working on together, and that's a lot of what we do. So people ask, is this actually real, or people have focused on it? There's over 320 unique government agencies participating in GSA's Emerging Citizen Technology Program on the federal, state, and local level, and we do work with Canada, even other countries. The federal and the public service community on these things is robust and strong, and there's a lot we have to do. But we can't do it alone. And like you started touching upon some of like the community and efforts. So I know this is Mohana's last night reporting, and she asked me to give her some scoops and salacious things, which I hope to get to a little bit later. But it's basically one of the interesting things is there is no fully defined path forward. But so they said the devil's greatest victory was convincing mankind that he didn't exist. But the worst thing is for you to walk away thinking that AI is some intangible future state instead of looking at the absolute practical things that could be done today core to IT modernization. And yes, there are future state stuff, but as a lot of people that I see, that I know, that I work with in this room, where's that GSA leasing team that I talked to earlier? It's in the back. People coming up with ideas on how to, up today, apply robotic process automation and other aspects to do more with less. It's not an intangible future, and as long as we are writing articles and reading things about that, it's doing a disservice because the decisions need to be made now.
I just want to add on to that, because it is not an intangible future, but it is very disruptive, right? And so because of the disruption, I think is why we need partnerships between the private sector and the public sector to kind of work together and make sure that we have some real structure in place and some real examples. And I think that is one of the issues. I know we haven't even started with your questions yet, but that is probably one of the right. It's just a conversation. That is one of the reasons why there is so much hesitation with the understanding of AI and maybe wanting to even implement it a little bit further, because what is the use case? What is the proven, where has it really been proven successful? We know some stories and some really bad stories where, you know, within 5 minutes, Twitter was tweeting something else that wasn't supposed to be tweeted. I don't know if you know that story or not from an AI perspective.
I know all stories.
I know you do. I know you do. Yeah, he probably was. But there's some, you know, there's some bad use cases, right? I think it's our responsibility as the advocates for AI and for just technology and innovation to show the positive use cases.
Yeah. I don't know, Camille.
I'm not needed here.
Just a quick comment
Yeah,
about
that's totally fine.
This is the need for public-private partnership, the need for being able to communicate using this technology that's available today, as Justin just articulated. I mean, this has been a driving motivation of the prior administration and the current administration. And that's why the interagency that Justin and I are part of, it continues, it's vibrant, it's strong, because there is great opportunity, and often the public is aware of the negative and not so much the opportunity. So I really appreciate Justin championing things as he does at GSA to help be practical, help be positive.
So I'm actually going to kick it back to Justin, and this is kind of a silly question, but
You're not going to ask about the Terminator or HAL 9000, are you?
no.
Okay, thank goodness. Continue, please.
It's not here, but
You can
no.
add it.
I have a silly question, but it will kind of set the stage for government's adoption in AI.
Yeah.
So on a scale from 1 to 5, where 1 is chatbots and 5 is humanoid robots, where is the federal government when it comes to AI adoption?
I don't think those things are too dissimilar, actually, on the scale. In fact, if you were to pick two things that are pretty damn similar, I would say it's those things.
Okay,
but
so
no, but I
give
understand
me
what
a
you.
number.
Okay, no, so okay, let's 5. I like the number 5, but
Okay.
the whole thing is the scope, depth, and difference. People act like AI is like some, you know, genie that comes out, and it's, you know, like Nick was talking earlier. The whole concept, the whole perception is shaped around general intelligence and what you see in movies and stuff, not at the discrete, unique use cases and applications that oftentimes people will, like when we see a pilot program, the end user doesn't know that they're using AI. They just know their day went a hell of a lot better because something that took a long time to happen happened maybe instantaneously. And I mean, that's really the point of it, is that we've got things worked up so much in our mind where it's like talk about Plato's cave, where people are looking at the shadows of the wall instead of the fire. There's so much hype, but this is many different things, and there's many different unique applications. And the thing that I do know is that there's not a single federal agency and probably not a single federal program that could not benefit today from some minor application of it. Now, yes, when we get up to 5 and we look at the future state, well, that's a whole different thing. But we can't think about that at the jeopardy of not looking at what every federal agency can do today to do more with less.
Can you point to specific use cases? What are some of the agencies that have implemented AI? What are the problems that they're trying to solve?
Well, I mean, so we usually don't like calling out agencies, but makes it easy because GSA itself completed a pilot. Federal Acquisition Services did a brief pilot for the FastLane program. FastLane was actually the service for identifying emerging technologies and bringing them quickly onto GSA schedules. So it was this whole thing and the idea of it's like eating your own dog food on that sense where, and it worked. This pilot worked. It used robotic process automation, a blend, was able to do simple things. And we were having a discussion with the great GSA team out back earlier, is that people think that they have to bite off huge chunks, and it has to be this grand thing to match the idea of AI that people have on their heads. But really something, and the best thing agencies could do right now is identify little minutiae, little processes and steps and things. It's inexpensive comparatively in order to execute. It shows an example, it's a pilot, it's scalable, it's replicable. These are things that can happen every day on it. And I think that's really where government, it's like another office in GSA came and said, their contact centers, they said, we're pretty sure we could knock $10 million off our budget by doing X, Y, and Z and using chatbots in it. That adds up, and because that's a process that every single government agency could also employ if it works for that system. And that's why it's so exciting right now, because every step we take and one agency takes, it is opening up a whole world of improved services and cost savings for agencies.
I like Justin's idea of taking it in small chunks, because I think right now we look at AI like we did the cloud a while back, right? We said, oh, the cloud, what is that? Oh my gosh. You know, and everyone had a hard time wrapping their mind around it until I told my mom, like, Gmail is the cloud, Mom. Like, well, seriously. You know, so it's not until you really have.
Gmail is the cloud?
Yes. Did you know? And so now, you know, with these smaller concepts or lighter weight concepts, you know, a lot of people think AI and they automatically think the drivable car, you know, the automatic cars that drive and, you know, kind of things like that, and can't really fathom that. But you can fathom a chatbot. That's something that's very real. You can fathom that in different perspectives, and just from my perspective, from a call center perspective, from, you know, various perspectives in interacting and engagement and improving that engagement model. Sometimes even, I'd say from a Xerox perspective, engaging with customers. And I'm not saying that Xerox uses chatbots to engage with customers, but, you know, that is a real tangible thing that we could do. And so it really breaks it down and makes it not so intimidating as it could be, as we, you know, thought about the cloud years ago.
Yeah, you and I talked a little bit about, you know, you gave the analogy of, you know, when the iPhone came out, people didn't, you know, they could never envision themselves having a computer in your pocket and a camera, and now that's like second nature to us. Yeah,
you know, that's why I called, you know, AI, of course, I don't think anyone in this room will disagree. It is a disruptive, technology, disruptive innovation. And I, from a security CISO perspective, look at it as really, really disruptive, because I want it to disrupt security. I want machines and things to do things for me, because I don't have the staff to do it myself. But I want to be able to trust what it says. But that level of disruption really takes the smaller chunks of proof, the NIST standards, to help us put some structure around and not go kind of haywire like we can sometimes, and pull, you know, kind of rein it all in and give us some really good structure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This is a question that has been asked many times, and Justin, I'll start with you. Do you see any threats posed by AI?
No. You know, with anything, this isn't even a question about AI. Everything comes with its own risks and opportunities and barriers and accelerators. So yes, there are risks associated with AI, especially if we leave things to chance. Yes, there are benefits and opportunities to AI that we could never have without it. Its inevitability is the other thing to say, is that amongst risks and opportunities and rewards and fears and threats, it is inevitability. And so what we have to do, and it's something that we talk about often, is we know that there's going to be debates, we know there's going to be conversations, we know that there's articles that have like Terminator robots when we're talking about chatbots, and then everyone gets worked up. You know, we've all seen them.
Oh, I know.
But when it comes down to it, the decisions are being made right now. We have to talk about it, and we have to build the infrastructure and the decision-making process and the ethics and the privacy and the security. All must be addressed. We don't have an option not to.
Michael, do you want to weigh in on that?
Talk about the threats, Michael.
Yeah. It does come down to us as a research and development and industry of developing responsibly, deploying responsibly, and what does that look like? And it looks like where we see industry consortium holding each other accountable. I think it's very positive. We've got a lot of also R&D that's being targeted towards these issues. And so this is one of the things that is a clear recommendation that has come out of reports and that the administration wants to see is that we have a well-coordinated research and development community, and where industry is not incentivized to cover certain important topics, such as some of the things we've been describing, that the government has a role to fund those things. And so, I mean, these are the things that we need to do to responsibly develop and embrace these technologies. And also in doing this, while we deal with today's, our opening speaker talked about today's technology, another term for it is narrow AI. Well, it's transforming much of what we're doing, and this is why Justin is so excited for embracing this now. While we do these responsible things in today's AI, it's really going to set a platform for us to be able to address the future. You know, there's some unknowns, you know, and we all see those, and so what we need to do is be preparing and be responsible today.
Just from a cybersecurity perspective, let me just say, I think the biggest threat to AI is data, right? Because what we found at Park was it takes, what, you show a person a cat one time, and they know it's a cat. You show it, you have to, a AI machine or certain engines need to see that 3 billion times before they recognize it as actually and take it as factual. So the success of AI is the success of data. But that is not to scare anyone away, because we've all said this, good data in, good data out. Junk in, junk out. It's no different from any other system, but it's really, really relative and really, really important when you think about when you think in terms of AI and things doing things for us, and those things being done based on the integrity of the data.
What are some of the aspects that are missing from this AI conversation that you have with people? Justin?
I will take the mic on this one. And it's something that we talk about and we work on all the time, between meetings, late night conversations, is these missing pieces and that no man's land that I described. In fact, there's a couple of things that we started launching yesterday that I guess I could mention about how we can address kind of like that chasm, and people are knowledgeable about it. Through the Emerging Citizen Technology Program, which again is 320 unique federal, state, local agencies. The first thing, and only half of these things could directly involve Nick Sinai in some way. We were joking about earlier between his work at Harvard and also venture capitalism, is one of the things is the U.S. government needs a permanent and continuing flow of information and insights and market research of what's coming next. Organizations like In-Q-Tel, Homeland Security has their innovation and venture capital wing. So actually led by HHS through our program, we're starting an interagency venture capital advisory board for all federal agencies to be able to tap into and learn from the insights of the organizations that are working with the best investment firms from Silicon Valley and other places. That just started yesterday. Second, one of the things we often hear, because it's one thing for us, and we're passionate about this, so we're going to talk about AI, but this is truly something that will affect all levels and needs to be affected by all levels of an organization. We need senior leaders. We need program managers. We have people who never consider themselves technologists to be able to see themselves as literate in this and as stakeholders and stewards, even if they're not the techie. So we're going to be starting, and we're using GSA's Digital Gov University to pilot a whole new government-wide education and training system to bring in work with organizations like NVIDIA and other suppliers to be able to provide hands-on training and education and deep learning, machine learning, blockchain, anything that we see that we know that we're lacking a capability within the government. Well, we're going to start bringing that in and piloting that, and then working, with Michael's team and others to get feedback. Because if it's valuable, we're going to continue it. If not, there might be a better way or another organization to do it. And third, so we actually launched a lot of stuff yesterday. Shoot, I actually forget what the third one was.
We'll come back to that then.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Oh no, because Nick reached out, because he works with Harvard, and we've also been reached out with Stanford, MIT, Carnegie Mellon, and then we realized that there's a chasm between some of the greatest research facilities in the United States who both want to work and apply their knowledge in AI to public services, yet it's often limited by who do you have the email address of. So if we started an interagency, federal-wide academic research outreach program to specifically be able to join so we can start discussing more and articulating to the best research facilities in the world as to what are the things that we need answered, and also so when they're doing their research that we can plug them into exactly who they should be talking to in the government, because oftentimes they might not know who it is because the bureaucracy is dense and it sucks. And oftentimes, who they want to talk to, they don't know that program exists. We gotta stop that. If we're going to approach AI better, if we're gonna do these public-private partnerships, we have to find new ways of doing it. And one by one, we're gonna hammer this out, and we're gonna do this with your help.
If I might?
Yes, of course.
Tough act to follow, Justin. So something that I think doesn't get discussed enough is the fact that the AI that we're talking about today is actually not entirely new. It's been around a long time. And what I think the public doesn't realize is that there has been a lot that AI has provided and done in areas of pattern recognition and control systems and the like. And so certainly the capabilities of what we see today, primarily because of big data, the amounts of data, the tremendous increase in data throughput delivery and compute.
Which increased over President Obama's administration, I just wanted to mention.
Okay. and it continues.
It
yep.
does, it does.
And
That's the former White House
That's right.
official.
That's right.
that's right. And we're grateful. And so to help to tell that story a little bit briefly, so NIST spent decades in capabilities that you might think are capacities of AI or AI themselves. And so for decades, we have run programs of working with industry and the academic community in challenge problems. So we orchestrate data, we bring technology together, we benchmark it, and we'll iterate on it on a level platform. And this has been extremely successful in driving innovation and bringing things together in a standard way in the areas of information search. So I don't know if many of you are aware of the 25 years of the TREC conference, the Text Retrieval Conference, which really helped formulate the engines that we see in Google. There's also natural language processing and speaker recognition. I've spent 20 years in biometrics, so facial recognition, and again, voice recognition. And what's the relevance here? When you think about the AIs that we're now carrying around in our pocket, it's bringing all those verticals, which used to be kind of separate things, it's bringing it all together. And so one of the things that I think is very promising and very optimistic about is the things that we've been able to do at the National Institute of Standards and Technology to help responsibly work with the community to drive these technologies so that when they're brought to market, they are reliable and they do perform as expected. That we'll be able to do these same things with these more complex systems of systems.
Alyssa, one final comment?
Amazingly, didn't have anything to add to that.
Okay.
But I will say that we have to get out of our own way, right? I think that if we don't, really take a big chunk of this, start implementing and realizing, have a better realization of the possibilities and the practicality of it, we will find ourselves behind the curve. Today's the day. And today's the day, exactly.
So that's all the time we had. I'm sad I had like 10 more questions. Make sure you catch up with the speakers after the event during the networking hour. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Alyssa. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Don't go anywhere with that microphone. That one seems to work. Thank you all very much. That was terrific. The next panel is going to have a more DoD focus. But before we get into that, We have another sponsor we want to chat about, Pure Storage. I'm going to invite Nick Saki. Yep. Nick, welcome. You could take that microphone. If it doesn't work, we'll just
Thank you,
share
Steve.
that. Okay, great. Nick is a technical guy. He is a senior engineer over at Pure Storage. And we had the pleasure of chatting not only upstairs, but on the phone recently. And it was fascinating. Nick, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Right.
You described data as 4 Vs. Do you remember what they were?
Volume, velocity, variety, and veracity.
Right.
4 V's of data.
And how would you characterize those, the essence of data and what's going on in government right now?
Well, so one of the things that I get a chuckle out of, and I always have, is the concept of big data. And as when I worked in the Pentagon and the G2 as the Intel Information Architect, people would come and talk to us, and they were all about, new big data analytics capabilities, et cetera. And I sat there and I said to somebody once, the U.S. government has 5.5 million people, 311 million constituents. All data is big data at federal government scale. The challenge is, as was said before, the hamstringing effect is how fast can we move the data? And one of the terrific things that has happened over the last 30 years is we've had the concept of artificial intelligence, the concept of large capacity networks that are sort of almost ubiquitous, at least for the purposes of metropolitan regions they are. We've had an explosion in the quantities and types of data that are generally created on a daily basis, whether that's still frame pictures, video, audio, text, machine data, etc. We've had tremendous advances in compute. We've seen CPUs have become multi-core, and then they become massively multi-core in the case of GPUs. So we have this tremendous confluence of computing capability. So we have fast networks, we have hugely powerful processing systems that fit literally in your pocket. What we have not had an advance in until recently is storage. So we are overrun with data.
So storage has to maintain a speed
Exactly.
in order to be utilized in AI.
Right, and artificial intelligence platforms are particularly affected by how fast we can educate them. And that's really directly driven by how fast can we serve them data. So we have an avalanche of data, and the problem is we almost can't, it's like trying to read the Encyclopedia Britannica. You start at page 1, and you're 60 by the time you get to the end of the volumes. But
Right.
everything before that has now changed.
You mentioned a term I thought was very interesting when we chatted. You had said that if you're using more traditionally termed storage, disk storage or something, tell me what you.
All right.
you
So
mentioned.
if you are lashing up a high-performance artificial intelligence platform with the latest generation NVIDIA V100s, you've got huge quantities of RAM, you've got 100 gig networking, and you attach it to a 300 gigabyte hard drive, you have effectively given your AI a critical learning disability.
It's just not going to keep.
It's
pace.
not going to keep pace. It's like having dyslexia.
Yeah.
You simply can't get the information into the brain fast enough. To the previous point, you've got to teach an artificial intelligence like it is an infant. So you and I will see a cat and we'll immediately know it's a cat. But try that with a 2-day-old infant.
Yeah.
You'll have to show them that cat several hundred times before they get the concept that it is an animal, it is a feline, it has fur, it meows.
Right.
We have to do this with AIs. We're training babies in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So how well we can train them and how quickly they can become effective for us is directly driven by how fast can we feed the data. And I want to kind of introduce a new concept. It's not new, but it's a different terminology. Storage historically has this connotation of we put stuff in it, we close the door, that's it.
Right.
The truth of the matter is the data service component of an IT architecture, what we would think of as storage, is actually where the rubber meets the road. It is the equivalent of tires on a car. The car doesn't go anywhere without them. It doesn't matter how good the driver is, doesn't matter how beautifully engineered the car is. If it can't connect to the road, it goes nowhere.
Yeah.
So the
So-
data service piece, the storage piece, is what connects the data to the processing architecture. If we can deliver data at speed, we get much faster results with our analytics, with our artificial intelligence, with our insights, and that's really what it's all about.
So the storage needs speed in order to be effective, in order
Absolutely.
to support AI solutions.
Yeah.
All right, so how does Pure Storage play into all of that?
So I want to say this is sort of like everything old is new again, right? Artificial intelligence is not a new concept, and I am thrilled to see one of my mentors and early influences, Dr. Cott, in this room. He is the father of a program called RAID at DARPA that I was exposed to early on. Flash memory is not new. It was patented and invented in 1982.
Which is what Pure Storage
Right.
is
Well,
technology is.
It became the commodity storage class memory that's generally commercially, industrially available today.
Yeah.
AI is not new. Networks aren't new. Samuel F.B. Morse invented the first digital network.
Yeah.
We're just doing the same things. The only thing that's changed is volume, velocity, and variety of the dots and dashes. So hard drive existed to give us capacity. Hard drives did for a while meet our speed requirements, but our networks and our compute components became much faster. Storage stayed the same because memory was very expensive. When memory became cheap, because of these, suddenly we could make storage class memory systems that could keep up with the data rate requests from compute and networking. And that's actually what I call the class of 2008 and 2009, Pure Storage, Violin Memory, Skyera, any number of different companies came to be.
So I guess what I'm gathering from
Yes.
this is that Pure Storage is put a stake in the ground that they want to be the de facto standard storage for AI.
We did, and we have. And we've really built a storage platform that addressed some of the very unique requirements of artificial intelligence systems and big data analytics systems. When you have 10,000 cores asking for one piece of information from the storage system, it will bring it to its knees. So you have to engineer a system that handles embarrassingly high degrees of parallelism and massive concurrency. So we did.
Yeah.
We built the world's first solid-state scale-out file and object platform to address specifically big data challenges. So what we can do now is put 20 gigabytes of throughput, 1.6 petabytes of capacity, and millions of IOPS into a 4U form factor system. So 4 rack units tall. What's that, 6 inches?
Now don't go get technical on me. I'm just a publisher. I don't know technology.
Make it fast, make it simple, make it small, make it affordable, make it simple, because data scientists like to analyze data. They don't like turning wrenches on their gear.
Let me ask you, we only have a few
Sure.
moments left. How does somebody get in touch with Pure Storage if they want to learn more?
Well, so it's like giving your street address back in the day, right? www.purestorage.com/bigdata. But you're also welcome to reach out to me. My last name is P as in pure, S as in storage, A-K-I, at purestorage.com.
Did you change your name just?
No. Colin Agee's known me since I was 12 years old. He knows that there are at least a few of us running around with this funny last
Right.
name. Actually, speaking of former White House officials, my cousin Jen Psaki was the former White House
Okay.
Director of Communications and State Department spokesperson. So I hope some of you have seen how you spell that really weird name and how to pronounce it.
Great. Well,
So
thank
thanks,
you.
Steve.
Thank you so much for supporting this. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you. Camille, I'm going to invite you back up, and we are going to have our next panel, and I will leave it up to you to introduce who that is.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nick, Saki. No.
Microphones.
I have the only working mic, so we can leave the.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce the second panel of the evening. So we have Dr. Alexander Cott, who's the Chief Scientist of the Army Research Lab. Come on up. We have Hava Siegelman, who's a DARPA Program Manager. I know I saw Hava over there. Please come on up. And we have Colonel Kevin Seeley, who's the Acting CIO at the Defense Health Agency. Come on up. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Okay, so we have a little bit of a silly question that we're going to kick off with. So Vladimir Putin said that the country that leads in AI will be the ruler of the world. Is he correct? We're going to start with Dr. Cott.
Where's the working mic?
There you go.
All right. So tonight is the third night of Hanukkah. So happy Hanukkah to all those who celebrate Hanukkah. I would not necessarily put too much emphasis on opinions of Vladimir Putin. AI is important. AI will be important. AI is a future, not the future, but a future of many things to come. AI also has been around a long time. I've been doing AI, applied AI in 1980s, believe it or not. And even at that time, it was the future. So AI is the future, and it always will be.
Hava, you've also been, you can respond to that, but I know you've been doing AI for 25 years, I believe.
Yes. So it's true that the first paper on AI was written in 1948 by Alan Turing, but things have changed since then. And
A little bit.
A little bit. And I think that since 2012, we kind of consider it as the new wave of AI. And in the last year, I would say there are also a few very important changes to the field. So I actually think that Vladimir Putin said something very smart, because the future that we see AI in is an autonomous system, which means that we don't have to send people in, or dogs, or anything alive that we don't want to be hurt. We can actually send the robot to do things for us. And there is data, there is cybersecurity, there is adversarial information, there is information that you want to keep unleaked. So through smart use of computer and through AI, you can really go very, very far in government and in between countries.
Colonel Seeley?
First, let me say I'm honored and humbled to share the stage with these two individuals. But I'm having flashbacks to Sputnik. Not to characterize what Vladimir Putin says, but the important piece of that, I think the answer is that we need to keep up, right? That's the important piece.
So I want to talk a little bit about AI in the defense space. We'll start with Dr. Cott. Where do you see the most frequent use of the machine-human pairing?
So, coming from the United States Army Research Laboratory, I'm looking at the future battlefield, ground battlefield. And we envision it as that future battlefield populated by teams of humans and intelligent things, things of variety of nature. And this could be the vehicles, this could be the munitions, this could be sensors, this could be wearable devices. These are physical things, and of course there are non-physical things, the decision aids, the analysis aids, the autonomous cyber defense agents, and things like this. And all these things will have to work together between themselves and with the human soldiers. The human soldiers will not have time to babysit them. The ground battlefield is a very dangerous and busy place, and they have to focus on their tasks. So these intelligent things will have to have a degree of autonomy and intelligence to collaborate between themselves, collaborate with the human warfighters. We see them not as tools, but rather teammates, and that's a huge difference. They will have to become teammates. They will have to become helpers and participants in the overall battlefield mission. And that means a lot of things. It means that we will need not only to build this kind of technology and this kind of agents, and we do have a broad range of programs within the Army Research Laboratory and in collaboration with our academic partners, building the physical things which are becoming more and more intelligent, building non-physical, disembodied agents such as cyber defense, autonomy. But perhaps the most difficult challenge is to how to make them to understand each other. There's a fundamental difference between how machines think and perceive and communicate and how humans perceive, think, communicate. And bridging that gap is a largely unsolved and poorly understood research problem.
And we'll get to that in a second and talk about the some of the biases and things like that and ethical questions. How about you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would like to add. I think Dr. Ko talked about a lot of things. So I think when we think about the warrior standing there outside and trying to do things, then there's a great capability in virtual reality. So virtual reality seems to be an amazing tool. So if you stand and there is a building, you can actually, with a good virtual reality, be able to see what's inside the building, what's inside the rooms. So with enough sensors and with a way to connect it to you so that you can actually use it in an immediate way, that you don't have, to type on your computer or to ask questions, but you can actually look around and see what's there. So there are many great ways to communicate in such a natural way that you don't even notice. Or you look around and there is writing that tells you, 5 people behind you, or things of that kind.
Councilor?
I think in many ways, we're early in the fetal stages of what AI can do for, in my case, healthcare. I think Dr. Cott hit on it. It has to help, right? No matter what, it has to help. It cannot be a hindrance. And I think even with the technology that we have in a lot of environments and a lot of industries today, end users feel like technology is working against them. I think it would be ideal if AI and even big data analytics for things like clinical decision support, drug-drug interaction, adverse reactions, patient safety, all of those things that I think can be aided and helped by in the healthcare industry by AI. We have to get to that point. I mean, we're really at the point where we're still in big data analytics and the clinical decision support that we're doing. The insights that are available in the data sets that we have, they haven't been quite merged yet across the board. Now, providing that data, talk about the security just for a second, providing and opening up that data to allow that is an inherent challenge in and of itself. Getting that data opened up. I know it's U.S. Digital Services. It started that with the large data sets. FDA is doing the same with adverse vaccine reactions. But I think we're at the fetal stages of a lot of this.
And I want to drill down into more of the actual use cases. Hava, you're in charge of this really cool program called Lifelong Learning Machines Program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So that's my topic. I would love to talk about it. So this is a relatively, actually very new program of DARPA that is just now under contracting, so it didn't even start. So we're talking about something very, very new. So a lot of the AI that was mentioned here was based on taking data and crunching it and mining it and having all the time in the world to use that. What really happened is in many applications, and not only in the DoD, in many applications we don't have that amount of data and we don't have that amount of time. And we don't have this capability to to take data from Afghanistan and to run it in Pakistan, because things are not exactly the same. So what do? How we can take just the little bit data that we have and use it and not fail. So the idea of lifelong learning machines is to have something that we all do. We actually learn from our experience. So what does it mean? All the current AI applications and demonstrations that we have, what they do, there is a program that writes, perhaps people went to expert and ask how to do things and how to come to decisions, and there is some part there. Then there is another part that is based on machine learning in all kind of way, which is what we call parameter learning. So you have, like, say, some type of neural networks and some time of propagation or learning algorithm. But what really happened is that you have the program and the learning from the data all done before. And once it's all ready, you fix it. That's it. And then you field it. Okay, so think about the equivalence with us. You learn, you go to first grade to second grade, that's it. And now you have to continue working the world. So this is very much not the way that we work. We actually use our experience. So when we apply our knowledge, we also take it back as a new training set. The reason that it was not done before is that it's actually very hard. It's actually very hard to reopen and continue learning, because the way that currently AI is built is that it's smart to use very, very large data, but it's frozen. If you want, with current AI, if you wanted to take a new data and put it in, it will actually erase the previous data. Because let's say you have a neural network with many parameters, it learns on 5 million examples, but when you take, let's say it was in some self-driving car and the self-driving car had an accident, so you want to take the last 150 frames and include it in the network. So if you take the last 150 examples and now put it in the network, it will write on all the parameters and will actually erase a lot of the previous information, and you will not know which. So there is actually a lot of smart and thinking of how to do this system that can learn on the go. So the system will train very little in advance. It will more kind of learn how to learn, and it will start with what it knows. It will be fielded, and once it's fielded, it will start operating. And if it sees that something is wrong, so in current AI, if something is wrong, you go to default and you do your default. Let's say all the time something is wrong because you're not prepared. Current AI will all the time give you default, will all the time do the same accident. In lifelong learning, it will fail first. It will realize that it's not doing well, and it will be able to tune and open and decide what from the word it takes to be its training set, its new training set, how to do it and cooperate it in. So this is really a very, very new way of AI, and we kind of think that this will really help in many, many ways, from actually big data that you'll not need to have so big, because you don't really care about the data. What you care is about what to do next. And for, autonomous system, for decision support, for merging from many, many applications.
I want to go back to something Dr. Kotz said, and in my previous discussions with you, we talked about the challenge of AI on the battlefield and countering deceptive AI and bad data. How do you overcome those obstacles?
Indeed, there are some massive challenges in applying AI to extremely complex and messy world of ground warfare. One of them, of course, is what I called D5. Dinky, dirty, dynamic, deceptive data. Write this down, please. Dinky, dirty,
dirty,
dynamic, deceptive data. That's what you get instead of your beautiful Googlish kind of million pictures of dogs and million pictures of cats that you can use to train your typical machine learning algorithm. You get a mess. You get data which are not nearly as numerous as you want. You may see 5 pictures of IEDs, improvised explosive devices, not a million necessarily of them. They constantly change. Nobody is going to label them. There's no time and no interest for anybody to label them. Very often there's more noise there than signal. In that sense, they're dirty. They're dynamic, they're changing all the time because the enemy is adapting and the enemy is doing new things every week, every day. And they're deceptive because everything in the warfare is about deception. So how do you deal with those kind of data? And what Chava is doing in lifelong learning is solving some of these very difficult problems, particularly dynamically changing environment, so that a more plastic kind of mind of future AI could adapt itself continuously without forgetting important things from the past, right?
Yeah.
So this is one huge problem, D5. Do you remember what D5 stands for? There's a quiz after this. The second thing that I would like to mention is a huge problem of adversarial learning. Adversarial learning is a rapidly growing field of research in which it was discovered relatively recently that we can very consistently and reliably fool AI if it's based on conventional machine learning. And we can do it even without knowing what's inside of that particular machine learning algorithm, because it turns out that we can figure out relatively reliable deception methods even if we don't know exactly what machine learning algorithm is being used. Imagine that. You know, with much wisdom comes much, you know,
Power, responsibility?
no, troubles. The more you learn, that's what all deception is based on. The enemy finds out what you have learned and uses that to deceive you. And of course, that's what we're seeing here. This is a whole new world. We're actively working in that field in the adversarial learning. You will probably hear more and more about it as time goes on.
It's just funny because I'm currently working on my next program, which will be called A2I for adversarial AI, which will really have to deal with the things of how to trick and how to strengthen.
Maybe you can partner up.
Brilliant people think similarly.
So, Colonel Staley, I want to tie that back into the space you're in. How do you deal with, in the health space, dirty, dinky, dynamic, deceptive data, or tainted data? Tainted data.
So we scrub our data. We do have data scientists that work in the healthcare space and the Defense Health Agency, and we look at our data and we clean it, and we throw out the stuff that we believe might be tainted or that skews our patterns and trend recognition for our from some deep learning algorithms. So we do some of that, and it does help the things that we're doing. Where we have to be concerned, I think, where the adversary wants to do harm, right? For us, woe to the early adopter who has to live through some of the accidents. In healthcare, we really don't want to take that chance. So it has to be not the infant or the fetal stages, but the adolescent and the adult matured technology, so that we don't harm our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. That we're very proud of the survival rate in the last few wars by saving a lot of lives due to the improvements in technology, which were quite a bit partnered with innovations from DARPA and others. We were able to really improve our survival rate in the last few wars over any other war in history. So that's an important piece for us. So, and the AI, it definitely concerns me, but I'm also excited about the ability of the machine learning to real-time respond to cyber attacks and those that want to do our data harm across the healthcare space.
One of the most interesting stories I've read so far about AI has to do with some of the ethical aspects. Actually, Amanda, our reporter, wrote about something that Justin Herman said, that there are questions that you have to start considering when it comes to managing AI. So do you manage AI as a human resource asset, or do you manage that? How do you manage that? But what I wanted to talk about was more of the ethical sides of how do you make sure that AI isn't biased? So there's this algorithmic bias that exists. Hava, do you want to take a stab at that question?
Sure. So, like everything that is based on data, if the data is biased, the machine is biased. And AI is today becoming a very, very strong tool, and a tool that is not constrained by things that we are constrained, like what we can say in public and what we should not say even if, you know, even if statistically there is some truth to that, because it has to change. And the machine does not have these things unless it is particularly told and trained not to do these things. So there is a responsibility when you do AI and when you want to listen to that and put it outside, you know, for people to use. You have a responsibility to teach it what you would teach your little child. And this is something that you have to do, or else you put a huge power in the hand of a box that should not have it because it's not sensitive.
And then you have a robot revolution and taking over the world, right?
Well, for the robots, for the robot to talk to each other and communicate to each other and define joint goals, this probably will be the next program. So
We don't have to worry
there.
about that right now, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. Dr. Cott?
I believe that machines do not have biases. We have biases. And whenever there is a situation when people say, well, algorithm has bias. No, we introduced the bias into that algorithm. So let's look in the mirror, and that's where the AI bias really resides. But you're absolutely right that there's an enormous challenge of how do we control and manage AI more generally. It's okay if you are talking about one program that resides on one processor and we have some knobs and buttons to control it in some ways. But we recently started a new large collaborative research alliance, which is kind of a collaborative program between government scientists and academia scientists, and it's called Internet of Battle Things. Internet of Battle Things. So imagine literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of independent, intelligent things that are all working together between themselves and with the soldiers, and they're constantly being very fluid. Things change all the time because the enemy is out there trying to disrupt and destroy them, and so everything gets rewired literally every few seconds, and everything gets partially destroyed and restored, and so on and so on. How do you manage that kind of AI? That kind of AI, what do you do about that one, which is to a very large extent, is emerging process. It's emerging thinking between all those hundreds of thousands of things.
Don't worry, that's next on Hava's programs to launch.
That's right. So anyways, I wanted to mention that the issues of managing this kind of complexity is probably a lot more challenging than just making sure that one particular program doesn't tweet something that is incorrect.
Colonel Staley, do you want to add?
Well, it's just that. I mean, these are advanced difference engines that we've been working on since the 80s, and I like to watch a lot of Discovery and Science and History Channel and even C-SPAN, and you hear a lot of great things about how advanced AI has become to do the things that it does. It is quite amazing. And it is the future of the battle space, right? I mean, we understand that cyberspace and those things that come, they're for good, and the adversary will figure out how to attack them as well, ensuring they're secure and ensuring those battle bots and the things that are helping us treat folks on the battlefield they're helping us, right? They have to help us, and we got to know they're secure. I mean, the early drones that fly and potentially have their data streams interrupted by enemies are a good example of, we've learned some of those things early on with the self-driving cars and the drones and everything else, and we are again at the fetal stages, but to see where it's going to go, it leaves a lot to the imagination.
I think we can take two audience questions. Mike? Do you have a mic? Okay. So Mike will walk around with a mic. Questions for the panel? All right, first row here.
Sure.
Tell us who you are,
Hi,
what organization
I'm
you're
Phil
with.
Feldman. I'm with ASRC Federal. A lot of what we have to deal with resiliency brings to mind a lot of my training as an ecologist. And I would be curious to see how you are incorporating those ideas of ecological resiliency into machine learning and AI concepts. Because that seems to be an area where there are systems that can be nearly completely destroyed and rebuild themselves in an emergent way.
Thank you so much. You're bringing up a tremendously interesting point. I'm just about to send a book to the publisher Springer on cyber resilience, and some of the ideas there are certainly borrowed to some extent from ecological and biological analogies. So yes, there is a growing trend or thread of thinking in that direction in cyber resilience in particular. So yes, the answer is yes. Is that good?
Hi, my name is Leye, I know, BAE Systems. I have a non-trivial question, and that is it possible to build a foolproof prime directive into AI systems so that this will be one way to make people comfortable with this kind of systems, knowing full well that it can do no wrong?
Can you build a system that can do no harm?
So you're saying,
Right.
is it possible to build a provably correct and harmless system?
Right.
It's very easy. Make sure it doesn't do anything. Any thoughts about that?
Do you want to add to that?
So there are actually two programs in DARPA that have to do with assured autonomy and explainable AI, which try to make people more comfortable. It is the reality that once you make a system and you try to make it more comfortable to the person to use it, the system loses some of its capability. It's the same like us. If we will do everything only if we can rationalize and explain them and will not make any other thing, it will harm our capabilities. And the same is true for a system. So there is really a balance, and it is a good balance there. In practicality, sometimes we don't want to do all the fancy things that we researchers love to invent, but sometimes we have to kind of take it low and comfortable. So it's a good point.
One last question.
Hi, I'm Dan Kunzig from Oracle, and I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more about how close we are from an explainable AI perspective to being equivalent to expert systems.
I'm not sure I understood.
The explainable AI interface you were just referencing, I was wondering how close we are to actually achieving that and being have AI actually explain its decision-making process.
So the program of explainable AI is actually interesting. So it does not only build on nodes that have meaning in advance, but it has to come up with explanation just as it comes up with its behavior. So it learns at the same time what to do and how to talk about it. So it's something that has to do with natural language or with modeling at the same time that it does the thinking. So that is the kind of thinking that is done now. It's not great yet. You know, the program is still there. There was also a previous program of IARPA that didn't reach very high. And the one of DARPA has some different side that the hope is to reach higher with that.
Thank you.
I would add to that I personally slightly skeptical about the success or great success of that effort. Dave Gunning is a great guy, and he seems to have a golden touch. Every program he touches turns into some form of success. I'm not sure if it will be explainable AI. It will be something else, perhaps. But you know, if it succeeds, it actually has a promise of something much greater, perhaps some sort of a connection between sub-symbolic and symbolic AI, which is a holy grail of AI for decades and decades.
That concludes our programming. Thank you to the speakers, to the audience, those who are watching on the live stream. Please stay and have a few more cocktails. Network, make sure to ask really good questions. The panelists will be available, right? Sure. Yeah, now they have to. Thank you and happy holidays. We'll see you in late February for our next event. Thank you.